Na 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 na. Batmav. Welcome back to Motorsport 101. I've always wanted to sing a theme song to start a show going. Welcome to episode 509 of Motorsport 101. I'm your friendly neighborhood host, Dre Harrison, and welcome to one of the most loaded MotoGP podcasts I think we've ever done on this show. This is going to be a whopper of a time because a lot has changed in the last 2 weeks since we last recorded a MotoGP episode. Well, technically 3, given we had an extra week off because of the fact we didn't have a Grand Prix in Argentina this year. It got butchered off the calendar, so to speak. But let's just say the sport coming back certainly made up for it with probably its greatest Grand Prix in America in recent history. I'm trying to think back of the last time we had a MotoGP race in America that was this good. Maybe 2015 with Marquez v. Lorenzo at Indianapolis, something along those lines maybe, but this was a classic, and that barely covers everything that went down in the last 2 weeks within the world of MotoGP, because by the way, we're now officially under new ownership, and we'll get into that in a minute as well. But first, let me quickly get to our co-hosts as ever on this show. First up, Mr. Cameron Buckley. Hello, sir.
You know, with your BAT intro, I am now going to take my BAT credit card, good through forever,
and
pay off this bet, you scumbag. Because this guy paid off someone at Yamaha to throw the entire Brinks truck at Fabio Quartararo. So, $50 to Doctors Without Borders.
Yes. For those who don't know the context behind this, our season preview back in February. There you go, man. Brilliant. Much appreciated. For those who don't know, me and Cam in our season preview back in February had a $50 bet for the charity of the other person's choosing as to whether Fabio Quartararo would stay at Yamaha or not. I said he would stay at Yamaha, although I must admit, in my defense, in Cam's defense, I was leaning towards changing my mind on this as the season went on. But Fabio has now signed a 2-year deal to stay with Yamaha. We'll talk about that in the back end of the show. And Cam's lost another bet to me on this podcast. So he actually paid up for one of these for once, which I'm very pleased for. And I said the chosen charity would be Doctors Without Borders, who are doing their very best to supply relief and aid across the world in war zones, and especially right now in Gaza, and for obvious, understandable reasons. So I continued best wishes and thoughts and prayers to everyone affected out there. Thanks for that, Cam. Much appreciated. I'm glad we can put it towards a good cause, despite the fact we joke about biking shit on this show. So it actually goes into something decent, which I do very much appreciate. Also joining me on the show is Mr. RJ O'Connell. How's it going, big man?
Oh, it's going good. Did I tell you that I got to see the Windows XP background on one of my recent travels?
No, please tell me more.
Yeah, so I was at Sonoma Raceway for the first round of the GT World Challenge America season. Wright Motorsports won both races with Elliott Skier and Adam Adelson, but most importantly, I got to see the Windows XP background, Bliss, which is a real place that you can go to and is 10 minutes away from Sonoma Raceway, a place where, yes, grass does grow there. I know, because many people mostly see Sonoma Raceway when it's the middle of June and all the grass is turned into sand and brown, but yes, it's very pretty out there. I had a good time, and I'm glad to be back to talk about, I don't know about the best race in America, but this is certainly at least the best MotoGP race I've seen in a hot minute.
Yeah, I think so too. I have a knack of reviewing all the races I write for the Motorsport 101 website, of course. You can check out at motorsport101.com. I went back through the archive. The last time I gave a race the score that I gave this one was Texas 2023 in IndyCar, which ended up being the Motorsport 101 2023 Race of the Year. Well, nominee.
No,
I think he should have won.
Yes.
Famously.
For once, Cam talked me into actually picking something from the world of sports cars.
No, I tried to convince you not to because the race was artificial. I still stand by Thailand from last year, and this was easily the best MotoGP race since Thailand. Might have even been better. It was really, really fun for a number of reasons. Unfortunately, as a Marc Marquez fan, that one Family Feud clip, I ain't gonna say it, but you know the one.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. I know
Name something that a woman might drive a man to do. Well, in this case...
I thought about it a couple times.
Naked grandma.
Naked grandma. No!
Ding!
We don't want to see that either.
But I wouldn't want to see that either. But all of that, new ownership, Maverick VInales dominating the weekend in an all-time classic for MotoGP in the United States, as well as all the coming and going in the Yamaha and everything in between over the next probably around 75 minutes or so on Motorsport 101 in this episode. I can't wait to get into it. But first, let's get over the general housekeeping. Places you can find us real quick. We're at motorsport101.com, our website, if you want some extra bumper edition thoughts from yours truly. It's one of my favorite DRRs I've written in quite some time, actually. motorsport101.com/blog. You can check out my extra race review thoughts on all things COTA and beyond on there. Featuring Baggers and Sonic the Hedgehog. It was quite the weekend, to say the least. Something was actually better than the Baggers. I didn't think that was actually going to be possible this weekend, but here we are. So yeah, check that out if you haven't already. If you want to follow us on social media, you can at motorsport_101 on Elon Musk's failed, now trying to charge business investment, as well as our Instagram page, Motorsport101 Pod, for our thoughts on there. You can follow us personally at Dre Harrison 101 and RJ O'Connell and at C Buckley 917. And if you really like us, you can back us financially on Patreon, patreon.com/Motorsport 101. You can back us at the $5 level to get early access to all of our episodes, or you can upgrade to the $10 tier and you can get all of that, plus supporters general access to our Discord server and the ability to send these shows live as they're being recorded, like Jason is doing right now. So thanks, Jason, for listening in as ever. Right, let's get into an absolutely heaped Grand Prix of the Americas weekend.
And I guess it's only right that we start with the most important news of the day. Kyle Wyman and Troy Herfoss splitting King of the Baggers weekend in both feature races at Circuit of the Americas. God, I wish that's what we could lead with, but if you didn't hear, before the Grand Prix of the Americas weekend, we had a seismic announcement coming out of the world of motorsports, coming out of the world of MotoGP specifically. Liberty Media, the commercial rights holder of Formula One, has now bought 86% of Dorna Sports shares, MotoGP's equivalent, for $4.2 billion. The deal is subject to international clearance. However, if it goes through, Liberty Media will now own motorsport's two biggest world championships on 2 and 4 wheels, with rumors already circulating on increased media coverage, a push for U.S. market share, maybe even a combined weekend between the two. Trey, I want to start with you. What impact do you think this has on the global motorsport landscape? Because I think this deal has brought about some thoughts, some good, some concerning, some bad.
There's a mixed bag here, and there's a lot to break down first and foremost. Now, what I will say is there's a reason why I wrote in the script that this deal is subject to international clearance, because it is. This is not a done deal. I need to stress this. It's not the first time this issue was come up. When Bernie Ecclestone bought his slice of Formula One via his investment company, CVC. It was the EU's Competition Commission, which is one of the strongest and toughest in the world, representing the European Union, was like, you got to sell your MotoGP stake because we don't think it's a viable commercial product for consumers that you own the two biggest motorsport series on earth. And that's what Bernie had to do. He ended up selling MotoGP to its parent company, Bridgepoint, who have now since sold their side of the company. Well, funnily enough, they bought it for 600 million euros back then. So that's quite a return on their investment.
Let's say that is a hell of a profit.
Yeah, exactly. They've now sold, well, they're trying to clear an 86% sale of Dorna Sports. The Esperalta family are going to keep the other 14%, but the valuation was at $4.2 billion. So a 400% return on Bridgepoint's investment since 2006. So over the last 18 years or so. And I'll get this one out of the way. No, I don't think one entity should own the two biggest world championships in motorsport as a monopoly. I think that is an issue.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm not.
That's what the big criticism is all about, is the potential of Liberty Media owning two big motorsports championships. That's why I was opposed to Liberty potentially buying IndyCar and creating a monopoly of single-seater racing, and I still stand by that in this deal. But if it is going to go through, and if antitrust laws and exemptions are going to fold the way they did with Microsoft and Activision Blizzard merging, I mean, we're going to have to talk about it at some point if it goes through.
I mean, they ain't doing themselves any favors on the F1 side, given the prevailing rumor out of the next Concord Agreement negotiations. They're going to initiate a lockout of anyone beyond the existing 10 teams.
Not going to be started on this episode. Do not get me started on this episode.
We will get started here, and we will finish in another episode, probably in the future, probably talking about a different series.
Probably next week after China, quite frankly, because I'm not happy about that at all. I think that's bullshit.
So, well, you know what they say about moving the goalposts. If you keep moving them far enough, eventually no one's going to bother trying to clear them.
Yeah.
Justin Tucker,
Jesus Christ. I can only kind of echo Dre's sentiment that it feels kind of weird for a single company to attempt to own the pinnacle of motorsport overall on 4 and now 2 wheels. But you could also kind of see it coming with the moves that Dorna has been making, that they keep trying to be Formula One. They copy everything about Formula One. Fuck it, we might as well sell up to Formula One.
Yeah, I mean, I already knew from people inside Dorna that they were absolutely cozying up to Formula One rather than trying to be their quote-unquote competitive rival, at least from a social media standpoint. There was certainly a defrosting of that icy relationship in recent years, so I can't say I'm hugely surprised. There was a rival bid from TKO, the UFC and the WWE's parent company, which I think would have also been very interesting if TKO would have made a play to get MotoGP in there. As that could have been very interesting.
All the pro wrestling and MMA crossovers in this podcast would be insufferable now. Imagine if that bid had actually gone past the professional stage.
No kidding. And apparently they offered more money. They offered more per share than Liberty did. But
so what do you think would make MotoGP Dorna consider this offer for less money?
I know exactly what, at least I think.
You first, Cam. What do you think?
Because you're not gonna compete with Formula One. Because Formula One has cemented itself in a position where no matter how much dumb, borderline illegal shit they do, everything just seems to bounce off.
What I was going to say to that is that, Formula One has arguably never had less overall public support given recent scandal and drama, and yet the sport made 25% gains on its revenue compared to last year. It's been brighter than ever.
It literally doesn't matter what they do. The sport is, and we're going to see how that develops over the next couple of years, given the weekly edition of listening to the Dutch national anthem. But
it doesn't matter.
The factors that control that are beyond what goes on the racetrack. That attempt to lock out anyone beyond the existing 10 teams is a symptom of that. And if you can cozy up to that and you can hitch your wagon to it, you're not going to have to compete with F1.
I mean, the way I see it right now, I did write about this on the M101 website, by the way, when the news first broke. My thoughts haven't changed a huge amount since then. If there's one thing that Dorna have been struggling with in the last decade plus, it's getting people to watch their sport. The product has generally been very good for the last 10 to 15 years now. I mean, yes, it's in a bit of a rough patch. We've never hid away from that on this show in the last couple of years. But overall, they have a better product than Formula One does in terms of raw, sheer quality of racing and competition. It has been a golden age for MotoGP in recent times. But despite that, it's more than obvious they have not been able to increase their market share in a difficult F1 dominated climate. They have struggled to gain new fans, and they are suffering from classic tree falls in the forest syndrome, where it falls and then no one gets to hear it. So did it actually happen? And that's kind of been their problem for the last few years now. And look, say what you will about Liberty Media and say what you will about them ethically, I don't think anybody can argue their ownership of F1 has absolutely been a net positive in the most recent of years. The sport is worth more than it's ever been. It's been better promoted than it has ever been. It has got a new wave of younger audience and younger fans that any sport would kill to have right about now.
Truthfully, I would take even the worst of this current regime of Liberty Media owning Formula One than like the Ecclestone Moseley area in its best days.
Mm-hmm.
I love the racing, but like that era was completely out of touch with what sports fans wanted to the point. And now under Liberty Media, it's just like it's the same with the Premier League. At the very top, the Premier League seems very, very uncompetitive most times, despite Arsenal's best attempts, only to then have the Charlie Brown football pulled out from under their leg and then slip and fall right in their ass, setting it up for another easy Man City title. It just makes so much more money. The sport doesn't really even need to make a marketing push. It just kind of does that on autopilot. And that's what they're hoping comes their way out of MotoGP.
Well, I was going to make the point. Man City has won 8 out of the last 12 Premier League titles. Do you think people care about competitive balance over there? No, because the product's so good. And the fact that the Premier League has done a better job of selling itself as a product across the world than anywhere and any other sport has. Like, the Premier League doesn't make its money domestically. It makes its money by being dominant in foreign markets.
Especially ours, baby.
Yeah, especially in America, where the coverage is excellent. In some cases, better than ours. And our sport... It comes from the UK.
Couldn't be further away from that over here with MotoGP, though, because the coverage is, unless you have the artist formerly known as HBO Max, basically doesn't exist.
We did get this race live, the main event live on TBS, which is good. It's better.
Yeah.
Could be better.
We got one.
You know how wild it was seeing MotoGP advertised on Inside the NBA?
Dude, that's crazy.
Ernie Johnson describing bike riders riding at 225 miles an hour, and then Charles Barkley saying to Shaq, "You should try one of those with no helmet." I love Charles. Love Charles Barkley. May he never change. Look, on any level, and I can only stress this enough, Dorna badly needs that promotional help. Like, because Liberty has done a very, very good job at modernizing modern F1 marketing and promotion. That's the one thing that they do incredibly well, and Dorna needs that rub. For those people, because a lot of people have asked me, well, Dre, do you think A Ride to Survive would help MotoGP? To which my response is, do not chase that lightning in a bottle. You are not going to be. Are not going to replicate that. If
also,
anything,
MotoGP tried that. MotoGP tried that already, and it bombed
multiple times.
Yeah, it hasn't worked out for them because they didn't have a captive audience on the front page of Netflix.
Right, and because a lot of people have, sadly, some of the bigger and brighter MotoGP journos in this game have tried to come out with that. And I think a lot of them have conveniently ignored the circumstances that got Formula One to that point.
Yeah.
First and foremost, Drive to Survive didn't really hit the ground running until season 2, and that was when Mercedes and Ferrari were included. That was the 2019 season, which released in 2020, literally days before the world stopped turning, but that was also part of a sustained 5-year multi-pronged marketing approach to F1 to try and get it back in the good books of a lot of places like the United States. Remember when they used to use the tagline "Engineered Insanity"? That was all Liberty Media's work. And it worked beautifully.
Yeah, you got a captive audience locked in their houses for 3/4 of a year with a pretty good product, and then when they actually tune in to the series the next year in 21, they get a title battle for the ages.
Yeah, the timing and the convenience of how DTS worked out could not have been better for Formula One in general. You chasing that lightning in a bottle is not going to happen twice, and there's multiple reasons for that. Number one, the circumstances aren't there for it. Number two, they've tried branching spin-offs of other sports to have this show. Breakpoint for tennis, Full Swing for golf, Unchained for the Tour de France, Quarterback for the NFL. None of these other sports either needed the boom, like the NFL did, or had a similar spike in viewership all of a sudden because they had a behind-the-scenes documentary series. It wasn't just that made these shows great. And if I'm going to be real with you, MotoGP has one half bankable star in Marc Marquez. And look, I love Marc. He ain't Valentino. He has never been Valentino.
He doesn't try to be.
He doesn't try to be, but he never will be Valentino.
I guess if it's not Ride to Survive, if it's not a docuseries, then what's the benefit that should come out of this?
Better promotion for the best motorsport product week to week, arguably on television. What they need to do is they need to go all out to try and get a US TV deal, and a good one. That was a game changer for Formula One because back in the Bernie era, he couldn't give away US TV rights because nobody wanted them. But one of the big reasons Formula One has had a genuine rise in fans in the US was because they were able to get an ESPN deal worth $75 million a year.
Yeah, and that was pretty cheap at the time. And then when they came to renew, it grew, that value of that contract, the renewal grew metric shit ton.
Right, and ESPN doesn't even really do anything. All they do is broadcast the world feed.
That's it.
They don't do any of the production on it.
What a bargain! And they made more money off it the second time around, doing almost the exact same amount of nothing.
Right. It's just so. I think if they are going to have any shot of trying to replicate what it's done for F1, especially states like, because I mean, yes, it's an American media company. Of course, they want more eyes to watch it in their home country, like any smart business would. You need to figure out a network who can put this on live, front and center. Look, in the UK, I've screamed from the heavens about TNT Sports when it was formerly BT Sport and the fact they paywalled the shit out of this. I will give TNT this. Their overall coverage of MotoGP has been better than anything the sport has ever had. Eurosport, when it had it back in the day, you get qualifying in the race for the main event only. You might get the juniors if you're lucky. BT Sport, formerly now TNT, to their credit, give us everything. Every practice, every qualifying session, every race, and bonus coverage as well. We've had Jake Dixon got his own documentary series in the off season. Think about that.
Got him a MotoGP ride.
Right, like that is the model that I think American sports audiences need. Someone who gives enough of a shit to fully invest in this series.
Absolutely.
And I
think honestly though, the Turner Sports partnership could work out in the United States. I think if you add that, them getting back into NASCAR, Warner Brothers Discovery is already invested in all the ACO racing series to where World Endurance Championship is already going to be on that. There's opportunity there.
And yeah, they never forget Warner Brothers own TNT Sports. So they already, it was a simple matter of just lifting their coverage and just pasting it on.
Which means they're going to sell it to someone else or use it as a tax write-off.
Yeah, and look, don't get me wrong, I'm not all guns blazing about this deal. Jason makes a very good point in our chat. World Superbikes was not mentioned once in that 55-minute media call to announce it, which does worry me.
Which
is one of the primary reasons why there's the swirling rumor now that BMW will basically bail and come over to MotoGP, because there's about 5 times more viewership on the MotoGP side of thing there is in World Superbike.
And hardcore Superbikes people already feel like World Superbikes is, it's the redheaded stepchild of the Dorna Sports portfolio.
Treated as the second-class citizen, and so long as they continue to treat it that way, that's what it's going to be in the eyes of the promoters.
Indeed. So that's a concern. I'm not going to lie to you. I do love World Superbikes. World Superbikes is a series. It's, again, in a golden age for quality of entertainment, for likable characters, for great riders and great talent coming through. Like I know we don't talk about it on this show as much as we used to because the coverage is so slim, but do not get it twisted. It's not because it isn't good. It's great. It's better than it's ever been in the last few years. If you haven't watched Portimao Race 2 last year between Toprak and Bautista, go out of your way to watch it. It is a 10 out of 10 race.
Have you heard the word of Nicola Buliga?
Nicola Buliga is a star in that own series. Alvaro Bautista is still him. Toprak is incredible at the moment. He's pulling off miracles on that BMW right now, but no one cares. It's sad.
And all of this, Jonathan Ray has been swept to the sidelines.
Who?
Something that I never thought I'd be able to say.
It's a weird time. It's a crazy time, but we'll have to wait and see. Like I said, this is still waiting clearance, but Liberty, for what it's worth, are very confident that this will go through and they will eventually figure this out. Likely towards the end of the year is what we've been told about this will get signed off. Dan Rossamondo, whom you might know from his days in the NBA, who's been a very front-facing COO now for Dorna, was on TNT and talked very confidently about this deal getting done, but also just talking about the marketing and the promotional aspect of it. I mean, that's his background. He did a brilliant job with that with the NBA years ago, and the NBA is arguably the most highlight-ready, best-promoted sports league in America. I've praised the NBA immensely for the way they've handled it in recent years. So, this is it's coming from a good place, honestly, and I respect the people that are involved trying to make this work. I hope they can figure it out and find a way to make it work, because there's a lot of potential here, and I want MotoGP to do well. I really do. This is probably the best, even if it's the quite unethical place for it. It is certainly the best place to handle where MotoGP could be right now, in my opinion.
Yeah, I love trusts.
Oh dear. Should we talk about the race itself now for a bit?
Dude, what a race.
Yeah, we actually got a U.S. Grand Prix.
We got a U.S. Grand Prix for the ages, and the story ended up being Aprilia's Maverick Vinales, who took pole position with a record-breaking lap of 2-minute 0.8, won the sprint, and then came back from an awful start, falling to 11th at turn 1 in the Grand Prix to win by over a second from Pedro Acosta and Jorge Martin. But I'd argue there's even more to it than that, where Pedro Acosta led significant portions of this race, where Marc Marquez finally took the lead at one of his favorite home tracks on a Ducati and then dropped it. And
almost immediately.
And Jorge Martin taking more points and asserting his place in the championship on a weekend where Pecco Bagnaia was just not at his best. There is a lot of talk about. What's the biggest story out of this weekend?
It's hard for me not to say Maverick here, because if you're new to the quality or the enigmatic career of Maverick Vinales, and let me tell you, you're in for a treat. Because this is what I'll say this wholeheartedly. This was the best Maverick Vinales has been on a motorbike for 10 years.
This had big "it's about damn time" energy.
Oh, massively. The last time I saw Maverick Vinales ride a bike this well was the Dying Embers, the final year of the 125cc class, when he beat Nico Tirol head-to-head in his 4th career start to win a Grand Prix. I cannot stress this enough. If you're a newer fan to this sport, Maverick VInales was a child prodigy. And I don't say that about very many people. He was destined for stardom. And I don't say that about very many people in this sport, but Maverick was meant to be him. He was hyped as the Marquez stopper when he finally climbed through the ranks, got to MotoGP via Suzuki, won Suzuki's first race since coming back at a very cold Silverstone.
He's fourth in the standings on a Suzuki, and that parlays into a Yamaha deal where he is out of the gates just completely on fire to start 2017. I'm thinking, right, this guy is going to be, him and Marc Marquez are going to be fighting for championships for the next decade or so. They're going to be leading these two unstoppable Japanese manufacturers for the next God knows how long.
And then he went right into the buzzsaw. Because after those after that third race on the Yamaha, it never met the expectation. Really he would have races where he would appear to be a completely unstoppable force. And the next race, he would be kind of nowhere in the shadow of a still competitive Valentino Rossi, really, until his last season in the sport, last 2 seasons. The results never really met the promise. And even when Marc was pulled out of the way with the shattered arm in 2020, there's this new kid. And Fabio Quartararo comes in. Mm-hmm. And then, in all of this, it's been everyone but Maverick at the front.
Yeah.
Until this weekend.
It's weird. It's incredibly weird. I mean, this was a guy who spent the first 5 years of his career treating fourth in the championship as the floor. And he was great the moment he walked into the 125 class. He was great when he won the Moto3 world title. Got to Moto2. The only reason he didn't win a Moto2 title was because Marc VDS was a MotoGP team in all but sheep's clothing at the time, and it was Tito Rabat and Mika Kallio just dominating everybody in the class. Maverick was the constant third wheel, the thorn in their side, the Sebastian Vettel to Hamilton and Rosberg at the time. That was his role. He got to Suzuki, was dominant there, smashed Aleix Espargaro around, ironically. Got to Yamaha, but it never quite got there. He was good enough to win the occasional Grand Prix, because let's not forget, this Aprilia win was his 10th. He's got 10 top flight wins, which is rare. I think only 2 other men in this field have double-digit MotoGP wins at the highest level.
And that without winning a race since the season opener in 21 in Qatar.
Yeah.
I said it about many situations that ended badly. And I'll say it about this one. Yamaha and Maverick will not regret going their separate ways, or in this case, Maverick VInales demanding separate ways by insubordination, and Yamaha gladly acquiescing his demands to be let go. But they will certainly regret the circumstances that led them down that path.
And to be fair, it wasn't even the first time that Maverick had kicked up a stink. I remember his opening season with Team Calvo. He wanted to go up to the 250 class, formerly Moto2, immediately. The team wouldn't let him. He didn't let him get a say in negotiations, and he quit on his team. He came back and apologized, but there's always been this enigmatic mental barrier when talking about Maverick VInales, because we've always said he's had the talent to do this. And we've always said he's had the ability to be able to take a race by the scruff of the neck and go dominate. But I have never seen Maverick ride a weekend like this, where he was pretty much inch perfect from start to finish. Like, yes, he had a bad start in the Grand Prix, but that wasn't on him. It was a lot of that turn one bottleneck at Kota is nasty. No matter which way you slice it, someone's going to lose out on that.
He was carving up the S's in the first sector. It felt like, what if he was able to get past Pedro Acosta for the lead, that if he got clean air in front, nobody would catch him. It reminds me of, like, this is what Maverick and Yamaha was like at its prime. An agile bike that has just enough power to get by. Maverick was just so good this weekend. In a situation where when he joined that team out of desperation, remember, Aprilia was once famously the factory that everybody didn't want to join by choice.
And And right now, they're giving Ducati genuine problems here. Like, it's. I know it's 30 days, but let's not forget, if it wasn't for his gearbox exploding in Portimao 3 weeks ago, Maverick would only be maybe 3 or 4 points off the championship lead right now. The Aprilia is genuinely giving Ducati something to think about right now at the moment. This Ducati's got a problem. We'll talk about that in a little bit from now, but Maverick rode that race beautifully. There are watching Maverick at full flow on that Aprilia was like watching Jorge Lorenzo on a Yamaha. Just so buttery smooth and consistent and fast.
Just carving lines through the track, and that is what this Aprilia is best at. If not all that aero, all that ground effect, this thing is a cornering monster, much in the way that the Yamaha was in the past, as RJ alluded to. And now it's like the Ducati is the old Honda of the equation, the jack of all trades, but not quite the master of all, even though it's still the master of plenty of them.
Yeah.
And it's a race where he had adversity. He got bounced down to 11th. He had to go and take this race back. And just the almost boredom with which he was going around people. There was no urgency to it. It was just smooth and precise and effortless.
The inevitability of it.
It's even when Marc got the lead, before it dropped it on the brakes, which, brake pads, agony. It was going to be a race for second, because you could see Maverick coming, and I mean, there was points where he was 4 or 5 tenths faster than the riders up in front of him. Once he got the lead, he kind of just backed it down to a comfortable pace and never looked under threat.
He could have dropped the hammer if he wanted to. And that leads us to the stat that's been brought up many times from the drop of the checkered flag up until today. If it didn't count in the sprint, it certainly counted after he doubled up and won the Grand Prix. Maverick VInales is the first rider in the history of the Premier class of World Championship motorcycle racing to win a Grand Prix with 3 different manufacturers: Suzuki, Yamaha, and now Aprilia.
He's only the 5th man in the history of Grand Prix motorcycle racing, period, to ever win with 3 different manufacturers. Want to guess the other 4, gents?
Shoot, I don't. I wouldn't know that.
Surprised Cam's even struggling, because he's the bike anorak around here normally. But the other 4: Mike Hailwood, Randy Mamola. Randy's always on these lists somewhere because he was so good in his day. The great Eddie Lawson, and Caparex, Loris Caparossi was the other to do it, but his early Honda wins came from before what we now call MotoGP from 2001 onwards. So that's why Loris kind of doesn't count for the quote unquote modern era, as we now call it. But yes, he's only the 5th man in history to ever win with 3 different manufacturers, and that goes to show you the versatility of this man's talent, because they are 3 very different eras, 3 very different motorcycles, and Maverick's found a way to win with all 3 of them. And this has been coming. It has been coming, because he's had great individual performances with his time at Aprilia, as well as obviously
He should have been in the fight in Portugal when his bike let him down.
Yeah, should have been in the fight in Portugal. Last year at Portugal, he was right there with Bagnaia the whole way through. Stayed with him the entire Grand Prix, just couldn't quite get a move done, but he was in his wheelhouse the entire race.
3 second places last year, because it was Portugal. Was it Catalunya last year?
Portugal,
yes.
Catalunya, and Indonesia, where he finished runner-up.
Yeah.
7th in the points this year.
Right. He was right there with Bagnaia during Indonesia as well. He's had flashes of brilliance, and that's been the Maverick story from day one, really, where it's just been, the upside has always been there. He's just not been able to cash this in, and this was a magnificent performance. And I hope it continues, because look, if he can keep this up, he's a title contender right now, because Ducati are not. Ducati have got issues. The talk's been pretty obvious out of their camp. They have chatter problems. Their rear end is struggling right now, and their reigning champ, Francesco Bagnaia, is really struggling with it at the moment. He openly admitted he was in damage limitation mode to get the bike home in 5th this
might
past
be
weekend.
The first race in about, I want to say, 2 years, where Pecco he never looked like he was going to challenge for big points.
No, Enea Bastianini, a man who has pretty much been written off as like searching for new employment by the end of the season, unless Jorge Martin bolts to another manufacturer this offseason, he got the better of him this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he was third best. He was third best GP24 over the line. He was fourth quickest Ducati for most of the race because, as mentioned, the king of Coda, although he has had to cede the crown, he looked a little bit like his old self this weekend. And yet, despite leading, a persistent brake pressure problem, which meant he had to keep grabbing at the brake lever multiple times, which has got to be absolutely fucking terrifying on a GP bike, put an end to Marc Marquez's run.
I think I've seen enough, though. I think the old Marc Marquez is back. They can find a way to extract more praise out of that Aprilia.
He is annihilating everyone else on the GP23. He is turning Marco Bezzecchi into straight pixie dust.
Marco Bezzecchi was a legitimate championship contender. # why not Bez? Well, maybe this year. I don't know. But Marc Marquez he's riding like his old self, and it's a shame because, like, when we were watching this race together, the roar when he first took the lead and held it, that felt special. That felt like it was a long time
he carved up Pecco Bagnaia, got dropped behind him, and then passed him again at the exact same corner.
There were so many awesome moves in the first half of this race. It almost felt like the second half when Maverick seized control felt like kind of a letdown because we were getting so much wall-to-wall action in the first half for 60% of this race. Hand to heart, I thought Pedro Acosta was going to snatch the win.
If you're
gave it the old college try.
If you're already bored of us gassing and glazing the shit out of Pedro Acosta, then you're listening to the wrong podcast. It's not going to stop anytime soon. That boy is special. I have seen enough. KTM needs to go all in on this kid immediately. He is special.
Take Jack Miller to Detroit.
Not Detroit. Anything but that. No, but look, like, I need to remind everybody here, Pedro Acosta is 19 years of age. He's just become the youngest rider in Grand Prix history to have back-to-back Premier Class podiums. And he's... The scary thing is he's not hit the rookie wall. He's smashing through it. He's getting faster and faster every weekend. This was him comfortably leading portions of this race and ran a comfortable second with arguably the fastest man in the sport on raw pace directly behind him.
It feels like Bizarro World to say that Jorge Martin kind of rode like he took the points this weekend.
Yeah, he did. He did,
man,
like, it looks like
learning.
He's turned the corner.
Oh, God. And to that effect,
yeah.
Dre, it's very early. I mean, we're around 3. If Jorge Martin is going to be racking up points in sprint and race, Pecco's got to step it up.
Like, this is Pecco's worst nightmare. Not only is he struggling early doors with the chatter problems on his Ducati, Jorge Martin is handling those problems better than he is right now. And Martin has been the most consistent Ducati in this field so far this season. Yes, Bagnaia won in Qatar, but he's been nowhere since then. By his standards, he's not been at the races, and Martin has been the one that's been racking up points.
He'd be the one to tell you.
Yeah, like, it's incredible. Like it's incredibly startling to see that. And don't get me wrong, I'm sure Bagnaia will figure this out. It's not the first time he's been with the factory Ducati team that have had teething problems trying to figure out where they're at in the field. Once they figure this out, which I'm sure they will, Bagnaia will be back to his blazing best. And we all know that if he's good and he's at the front, he will win. Because we've seen Bagnaia do this a dozen plus times already. But right now, the best Ducati in this field is Jorge Martin, and it's not particularly close right now either. And that's why
negotiations really, really fascinating.
Yeah, because Bastianini is ahead of Pecco in the title fight right now. And he's been very solid.
Well, the factory Ducati team let go of their number one rider?
Well, no, because he's under contract and, well, marketing.
Everybody
he's got the number one on the bike. He's the defending world champion.
But he's not top of the standings among the factory Ducati riders right now. Ducati's got a problem on their hands.
And were it not for dumping it on the brakes, Marc would be second in the championship right now.
Yeah, that was a probably 20-plus point swing right there between him and many members of the field there. Marc, right now, Ducati is going to have a 3-1 doesn't go problem, and that is going to be a big problem because the rumblings in the paddock is no one quite knows whether it's going to be Martin, Bastianini, or maybe even Marc Marquez on a factory Ducati next year, depending on what Delinia wants to do, because apparently the resentment towards Marc Marquez in that camp is apparently frosting away quite quickly because he's Marc Marquez.
Well, yeah, he's turning everyone else on the GP23 into dust.
Yeah, at this point...
And shit, DG Antonio had a good weekend as well.
Yeah, DG was quick as well. I mean, look, there's no getting around it. So far, the Bez gamble of him sticking around with the team and not going to Pramac last year has not worked. Big problem. And, it looks like he's missed the boat because I suspect the fact that he turned that down has now led to Ducati signing Fermin Aldeguer on a bumper-long contract now. So now you're in a situation where Bez feels like he's been left in the shade, Ducati's moved on, and now they've got a 3-rider queue at the front to take their second bike for next year, and a Pramac seat that, there could be... It looks like Aldeguer will be on a Pramac, but there's still, what do you do with Morbidelli's seat? Is he going to stick around? Are you going to replace him with somebody else next year? Who knows?
There were signs for Franco this weekend. He actually looked a little bit more like
top 10 speed. Yeah.
Top 10 speed. Easy times. There was times where it was top 5 speed. And then it all went away again.
Easy bottom of the table behind Luca Marini and Taka Nakagami, who hate being where they are right now.
Yeah, in case you haven't read, if you thought things were bad at Honda last year, or the year before, or the year before that, or the year before that, they're actually worse. They're so much worse that they were actually slower, lap on lap here, than they were last year.
Oh, that's
not slower relative to the field. They were slower by about 0.3.
And only 2 of their 8 bikes made it back over the line across the sprint and the Grand Prix this weekend.
It's 6 DNFs across 2 races, back to back.
Mm-hmm.
You know where the vibes seem to be really good right now is at Fabio Quartararo's camp because he got paid as part of some big news.
He is going to be able to pay for so many engine upgrades.
Because,
he has what we call fuck you money.
Yeah, if you didn't hear at the top of the show, Cam is out $50 because Fabio Quartararo elected Say and signed a new 2-year contract.
Pain, and I bet on him liking not pain.
He signed a new 2-year contract with the team, and that's not the only big story at Yamaha, where Lynn Jarvis is leaving the team at the end of the season after 25 years of managing the Yamaha factory team. So, what do you fellas make of the staying and the going on at Yamaha?
I'll quickly say before we really get into this as well, a salute to Lynn Jarvis. He is, for me, quite possibly the greatest team boss in MotoGP history. 8-time world champion team boss in a combination of Valentino Rossi, Jorge Lorenzo, and Fabio Quartararo. He's had a cornucopia of some of the greatest riders that have ever graced this sport represent him and represent this team in generally classy, incredible manner. I've never heard a bad word said against Lynn in the paddock, ever. He's one of the good ones. And happy retirement to the great Lynn Jarvis, because 25 years at that team is a hell of an accomplishment. And a salute to him and all the best for whatever he decides to do next in life. Fabio Quartararo got fuck you money. Allegedly, it's 12 million euros a year was his new contract with Yamaha, which...
The Brinks truck, the Wells Fargo train...
Yeah, it's
the United Aerospace Corporation ship minus the demons.
Allegedly, it was what Jorge Lorenzo got paid when he went to Ducati back in 2017. That kind of money. It was It was Johnny Manziel. I've got money in my fucking mouth, kind of money.
It can only go better than those two editions of getting paid.
Oh yeah, I mean the as Michael Jordan would say, the ceiling is the roof. So he actually said that. But yeah, look, I think it could be interesting.
LeBron would never. LeBron would just lie.
What I would say is that I wonder if that was Lynn Jarvis's last act as team boss, was making sure Fabio was tied down for the future, because if you're Yamaha, it's an absolute no-brainer. You tie that man down and you open whatever check you need to write to keep him there for the next 2 years, because we all know he's a world-class bike rider, one of the very best in the world on a competitive machine. And while Yamaha isn't there yet, God bless them, they're trying. And you can see that they're trying. And that's the difference between them and Honda. At least Yamaha isn't going arse backwards into the night right now. They are genuinely putting an effort in.
Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, Alex Rins somehow missing last year here. He was still a good half a second, 0.6 quicker than anything that the Hondas could do. They're not hopeless, but they do have changes to make. I wonder what they've shown Fabio to try and convince him to stay. Successfully convince him to stay.
It needs to be good, and that's why I'm glad they kept Quartararo around, because we see it with Honda. Honda lost the greatest talent that they've ever had, and now they have to rebuild with. I love y'all, Amir. I love Luca Marini.
He was once the truth,
but man, that's a tough place to rebuild from. It's a lot harder when you don't have the franchise player.
Taka Nakagami is a Honda company man. Generally speaking, he has generally towed the line through much of Honda's struggles. He hasn't been silent, but he hasn't really snapped until this weekend, where he put down a multi-paragraph rant on how bad the Honda is.
And don't get me wrong. One, that's a statement. That's a defining statement coming from him.
This is probably his career. Like, he's in a contract year. He's matching the other Hondas, and it doesn't mean anything when you're last every weekend.
Yeah, it's pointless. This is a man who was probably taking years off his own career when he damaged his own finger tendons a couple of years ago. This is a guy who was lucky to still be on the grid if it wasn't for Ayagura completely mangling his wrist and blowing a Moto2 title attempt in 2022. But
even then, Ayagura also looked at the Honda and went, thanks, but no thanks.
Right. And, Taka is fiercely loyal to that camp, and even he's had enough. And it's what could Honda possibly say in response to after that? There's nothing they can say, because they know they stink. Like I openly admit, as host of this show, I fell into the honey trap again. I watched them at Valencia's test. I saw them, and I thought maybe there's hope. And once again, I fell into the honey trap. I got baited on Tinder by Honda, because they've gotten to Europe and they've again proven to be cheeks. Even more than they were last year.
That last year's bike looks like a missile compared to this thing. It's slower, it's even harder to ride. The bike has been made lighter, yet it feels... I'm just going to pull some of this out of Taka's mental breakdown.
At least with Ducati, at least with Yamaha, right? At least you can tell that, there is the promise of better things on the horizon, and especially now.
Here we go, right? First of all, best GP time from last year was over 30 seconds slower than last year's win from Alex Rins. Sorry, just under 30 seconds. Their best single lap time was a 2:02 flat from last year. This year, 2:02.38. Their best sprint race time last year, 20 minutes, 37 seconds from Rins. This year, 20 minutes, 50 seconds from Marini. They're almost 2 seconds a lap off the pace.
That's not good.
That's inconceivable.
Until this race, Marini had finished in the bottom 2 of every competitive session he had taken part in so far this season. That is... And we know Luca Marini's better than this. He's a solid upper midfield runner in MotoGP.
And Johan Mir is a MotoGP world champion.
And he looks like someone that's going to get booted to World Superbikes next year. I know someone will pick Mir up because the paddock knows Mir is better than this. The paddock has...
Johan Zarco was the floor guy of this age. Unfortunately, he's now spending more of his time on the floor because he's either crashing or the bike is failing. He actually retired from this race with a technical failure on the back of the bike. Let me from Taka Nakagami. Maybe last year I could say that we mainly complained about the rear grip. But now it's, of course, a lack of rear grip, but not only this. It's the bike balance, it's electronics, it's impossible, this feeling. Every lap, 2 seconds a lap slower. Something is wrong. They need to understand. This is the engineer's job, not our job. We, all the riders, are pushing like maximum. That's why the lap times are almost similar.
I know Honda's got their fingers in a lot of pies right now, but you're the Honda Motor Company. You have no excuses to be this bad.
This is the worst.
Excuses to be this bad.
This is the worst they've been in the Premier class since they debuted in motorcycle racing in the 50s. They've never known an uncompetitive bike like this, even when they were fucking with oval pistons in the early 80s.
And Jason in that chat sums it up best. Bottom 4, if they reach the line, that's the TLDR. If they make the flag, which at this point is a 50-50 coin flip at best, they are last. They are stone dead last. The only other person who's struggling like they are is Augusto Fernandez, who's having a really horrible time with this 2024 KTM right now. And we know he's better than this as well, but it's as Jason puts it quite right, it's the claiming rules teams era all over again.
It's the quality that you would expect from Ducati 10 years ago when they were struggling to keep pace with claiming rules teams.
Ducati were never this bad.
No, they were never this.
Ducati spent 4 or 5 years as like the laughing stock of this paddock, as they had all the money in the world and it was going to jack shit on track. They were never this bad. Not even close, RJ.
Yeah.
This is like Ilmord MotoGP level shit.
What is this? Nothing good, as John Boys would say. And yeah, it goes to show you that despite Yamaha not being a million miles away from that last year, that Fabio has decided to stick with this team for another 2 years because there's clearly hope in that camp. Because if there wasn't, and trust me, Fabio's been very open about this in the last year and change.
When he opened his first press conference with "It is what it is,"
a classic. A modern classic.
I thought my 50 was safe when he said that. Apparently not.
But good for Fabio. I think Yamaha are going to be in safe hands. They've still got, for now, at least one quality rider to build themselves around. And if that was Lynn's last major Actis team principal, well done him, because that's going to be felt long into the future. Because you can't buy a rider of Fabio's quality. Well, apart from 12 million a year.
They did exactly that.
But
and Rins wasn't half bad this weekend either. I mean, he is a bit of a Coda specialist, but this is probably the first real signs of life from Rins since his horrendous crash last year. It's good to see him trending in the right direction, at least a little bit.
A couple of loose ends to talk before we get out of here. If you haven't watched the King of the Baggers races, absolutely do so. They're free on MotoGP's YouTube channel because MotoGP streamed all 3 of them for free, $99, literally, on their YouTube channel over the course of the weekend. Great action, as ever. Shout out to our friend and yours, James Rispoli, for getting on the podium in race 2 as well. We love James. Congrats to him. Great to see him out there on a big platform again. Bike Live, Never Die, etc. Shout out on Masters weekend to Sergio, not the golfer, Garcia, for winning in Moto 2 this past weekend as well. Narrowly beating out our American friend and yours, Joe Roberts. The terrifying fact that came up during that race: first time an American has had a podium on home soil in any class since Ben Spies in 2011. Dear God, it's been a while. So good for Joe Roberts, having a very solid season quietly under the radar. Good time to get it with Trackhouse being around That's all I'll say for the time being.
Could you imagine this season is what lands Joe Roberts in with a MotoGP guy with a manufacturer that he famously rejected a handful of years ago?
3 years ago, Joe Roberts said he'd rather stay in Moto 2 than ride a bottom feeder Aprilia. Life has a funny way of coming around sometimes, doesn't it?
Yeah, circumstances change.
They do indeed.
You know what
keep an eye on that because... What's that?
David Alonso. Him.
Magic.
Him.
I mean, man... Okay, don't get me wrong. If you watch that Moto3 race, it's like the racing gods had decided that David Alonso was going to win this race no matter what happened around him, but he still had incredible pace and tyre management to be able to break the toe in the Moto3 race and beat the field over his knee. In case there was any questions or doubts, David Alonso is special. Another talent you're going to want to be watching very closely. Colombia's got themselves a good one. Dominated the Moto3 race. Keep an eye out for him as well. MotoGP will be back in a week's time for the Spanish Grand Prix at Jerez.
The first of many.
First of four in Spain, as ever. We've got the full fleet back, especially given they confirmed last week that Aragon's going to sign a new extension until 2027. So Aragon being the part-time round was a big fat lie. It's going to be on the calendar for the next 3 years. That's a guarantee. Big rumours they're going to unveil the next set of MotoGP technical regulations at this race.
Kill the ride height devices.
Please,
God.
One could only hope. Same brain cell, but yeah, that'll be MotoGP next week in Jerez. In the meantime, we'll be back next week for 2 episodes, one on Formula One in China, the first Chinese Grand Prix since 2019. It's kind of weird even saying that. It's been that long ago since the last time we had a Grand Prix in China. Max Verstappen only had 5 career wins. He's won nearly half the Grand Prix since then.
If he wins that one, he will have won half the Grand Prix.
Amazing how these things turn out. Again, as RJ quite rightly put it, circumstances change. So all of that next week, and our big special episode, well, there's your caution, next week as well. Looking forward to that. I've been waiting for this for quite some time, and it's going to be very, very fun. So until then, I've been Dre Harrison, they've been RJ O'Connell and Cam Buckley. Until next time, thank you very much for listening, and sayonara.
One more technical rebuild will fix it. One more lane will fix it.
Okay, Alpine.